Hello, Soberinos, and welcome to this week's Friday Fix. Today, I'm talking to you about mental rehearsal and how mental rehearsal can really help to set us up for success and for staying successfully sober, even in the face of some challenging triggers. And I'm going to explain to you a little bit about how it does that, and I'm going to give you an example from my own experience of how mental rehearsal has helped me. Now, you've probably seen from some of my other videos and from some of my articles and blogs that I really stress the importance of planning and preparation. When you're in the early days of living your life sober, it's really important to plan ahead for your triggering situations, for the challenges that you might be facing ahead of you. Because when you plan and prepare for those, you make it much easier to feel confident through those challenges. And you make it much more likely that you're going to sail successfully and much more easily through those challenges. If you don't do the preparation, you don't do the planning ahead, it's more likely, it's possible that you could be taken off guard. And it's in the moments that we're taken off guard that we are more likely to slip up and to kind of revert back to our unconscious automatic patterns and behaviors without really even giving it any thought. So part of planning and preparation is mental rehearsal. And I'm going to introduce you to that concept today, and I'm going to explain a little bit about how it works. So what mental rehearsal can help with is that it can help us to overcome those automatic negative rehearsals. You know, when you have something that is quite daunting or quite nerve-wracking coming up, whether it's to do with staying sober or whether it's to do with something general in life. It could be a job interview. It could be going to a party and staying sober. It could be having a difficult conversation with someone. What tends to happen with these daunting situations that are coming up is that we automatically go into a rehearsal or an expectation that it's going to be awful. And we unconsciously imagine everything that could possibly go wrong. So what mental rehearsal does is it enables us to consciously and purposefully overcome that automatic negative rehearsal and give us a positive rehearsal instead. What it also does is it trains our brains to expect success. And when we're training our brains to expect success, that helps us to think, it helps us to feel, and it helps us to behave as if we're already being successful. And that's really important because when we're thinking, we're feeling, and we're behaving like success is possible, like we expect success, we're more likely to make success happen. And finally, and most importantly of all, it helps us to feel confident. It helps us to go into these daunting or challenging situations actually feeling confident that we can do this. So whether it's a situation that we want to, maybe it's a drinking trigger situation, and you want to approach that situation and get through it successfully sober, doing a mental rehearsal in advance will help you to feel more confident going into that triggering situation. It will help you to sail effortlessly sober through that triggering situation because you'll have those levels of confidence in advance, which will help you through. So there are all sorts of ways that doing a positive mental rehearsal will help you to be successful, not just in staying sober, but in any area of your life that you want to be successful. So here's an example from my own experience to help explain that a little bit more. I remember quite vividly, actually, my first wedding sober Weddings were something that I never particularly enjoyed anyway. Weddings are not my cup of tea for all sorts of reasons, which I won't go into. But I remember going to my first wedding sober, and it was kind of a friend of a friend. It was their wedding. We'd been invited along, myself and my partner Stuart, and he had some family members there. And I remember dreading it. I remember that my mind went into this automatic negative rehearsal of how awful it was going to be. And I've made a little list here of all of the things that I was imagining or rehearsing going wrong. So first of all, I rehearsed in my head that I was going to be totally bored, that without drink, I was just going to sit there being a husk of a person, being an empty shell of myself, that I was just going to not only be really bored, but that I was going to be really boring, that I wasn't going to be able to socially interact with anyone. I wasn't going to be the life and soul. And not only was I going to feel boring and bored, but I was also going to feel socially awkward, that I was going to sit there chatting to all these people that I didn't know, or walking around chatting to these people I didn't know, that I would have nothing in common with, and I wouldn't be able to socially engage with them. All I could imagine was just feeling awful. What have I written here? My God, I can't read my writing. Oh, hating it. I imagined that I was going to be hating the experience. You know, when you kind of look ahead to something and you just sort of shrivel inside and you just don't want to do it and you're just filled with dread. That was kind of how I was feeling. I was looking at the, sort of forwarding into the future to this wedding and thinking, I just was hating it. I just didn't want to be there. And I was going to be hating the fact that everybody around me would be drinking. And you know, when you sit down at a wedding and you sit down to the dinner and there's copious amounts of wine, there's bottles of red, there's bottles of white, there's bubbly being served. All this wine was going to be around me. Everybody was going to be drinking and getting drunk. And I was going to be sit there furious. I was going to be sitting there absolutely furious with myself, hating every moment, hating the fact I couldn't join in and I couldn't have the wine that was being served, looking at all that wine on the table and feeling really envious that it was all there and I couldn't have any of it, and it was all free and I couldn't have any of it. And those were the kind of rehearsals my mind was doing. That was what I was imagining in advance of this wedding. But the good news is I caught myself doing this. I caught myself doing all of this negative mental rehearsal. And I decided instead to take some control. And I decided to do some positive mental rehearsal. And instead of all that bad stuff, I actually started rehearsing some good stuff happening. I mean, I made it realistic, but I started rehearsing some good stuff happening. And again, I've made a list of all the good stuff that I imagined. So instead of going in not wanting to be there, feeling boring, feeling bored, hating every moment of it, I mentally rehearsed going into the wedding and feeling curious about how the experience was going to be different, sober. And I got myself really curious about how that experience was going to be. What was I going to notice that was different? I even mentally rehearsed getting curious about how many other people I was going to see around me that weren't drinking, because I thought that would be a really good distraction to focus on all of the other people who weren't drinking. And it would also give me more confidence that I wasn't the only one and that I didn't need to be self-conscious or embarrassed or paranoid. So I mentally rehearsed going into the wedding and just being really curious about how the experience was going to be different. I also mentally rehearsed chatting to people. I didn't mentally rehearse being the life and soul of the party and being drunk Jo. I mentally rehearsed going in and being kind of socially engaged, socially interested, curious about other people, asking other people about themselves, because I knew that was realistic, that I could go into a conversation, I could ask people about themselves, and I could learn things about other people. So I mentally rehearsed doing that and engaging in conversations with people. I mentally rehearsed ignoring the wine, and I mentally rehearsed being okay with drinking water while everybody else was drinking wine. And one of the things that I mentally rehearsed myself doing was actually sort of sitting at that table, seeing all the wine being served, seeing other people drinking the wine, and thinking to myself, haha, you're all going to be suffering in the morning, and I'm going to be absolutely fine. And that was another thing that I mentally rehearsed in advance. I mentally rehearsed myself enjoying the food and the conversation around the dinner, around the table, so that I was going to really enjoy the food that was being served. Because without the drink being the focus for me, I could actually put my energy into other things. So I mentally rehearsed enjoying the food and enjoying the conversation around me. I also mentally rehearsed leaving early because for some reason it became more manageable for me to go into this wedding and to know that I kind of had an escape route, to know that I could leave early and that I didn't have to stay till 3 o'clock in the morning while everybody else was doing their drunken dancing on the dance floor, that I could get away earlier than that. And I mentally rehearsed how I was going to let people know. So I actually mentally rehearsed myself saying to people, all right, I'm off to bed now. I'm feeling quite tired after the journey and I'm just going to take myself off to bed. I'll see you all in the morning. And I mentally rehearsed myself doing that happily and confidently. Oh yes, and I mentally rehearsed myself sharing stories about the wedding with Stuart afterwards. So I imagined us getting into bed and having a laugh about the antics, that what we'd seen other people doing, what we'd heard other people doing. I also mentally rehearsed enjoying a really good breakfast in the morning, which is something I never would have been able to do in my drinking days. And I also mentally rehearsed that feeling of being really smug in the morning over breakfast. And I mentally rehearsed seeing everybody else coming in for breakfast looking a bit shady, looking a bit the worse for wear, not being able to enjoy their breakfast, and basically feeling superior and feeling smug that I was fresh-headed, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, enjoying my breakfast while everybody else around me was suffering. So I mentally rehearsed that happening afterwards as well. And the interesting thing is, and this is endlessly fascinating to me, is that when we mentally rehearse these things, we make them happen. So that wedding experience turned out pretty much exactly as I'd mentally rehearsed it. All of those positive things actually happened in exactly the way that I'd mentally rehearsed them. And that is the power of mental rehearsal. Athletes do it, successful entrepreneurs do it, successful educators and therapists do it. Anybody who is eminently successful in their field uses mental rehearsal as a tool to set themselves up for success. And you can do exactly the same for staying successfully sober. What else did I want to say? Oh yes, so watch out for information coming your way about our next Go Get Sober live session, because the next Go Get Sober live session is going to be sharing a mental rehearsal tool with you. So if you're unsure about how to go about mental rehearsal, the next live session is going to give you a tool, and I'm going to walk you through a tool that's going to help you do exactly that. Now, the live sessions are for members, for people who are members of the guidance program on the website. So if you're not already a member, I really encourage you to get along to the website, sign up for a guidance membership, even if you only sign up for a short time, just to enable you to access some of these live sessions. It's worth it. It's super cheap, super accessible, and it enables you to access lots of techniques, tools, and resources that are going to help you set yourself up for success. So watch out for information about the next live session. We're going to be going through, those of you who are already members, we're going to be going through Module 1, Step 2, the Imagine the Difference activity, which is all about mental rehearsal. What else did I want to say? Oh yeah, and this is a tool, by the way, that once you've learnt it, you can use it over and over and over again for different triggers that are coming up, different challenges that are coming up, different events in your life that you might want to really work at being successful. This is a tool that it's such an invaluable, empowering tool that I really recommend that you do come to the live session and you do get familiar with how to use it, because it's absolutely life transforming. So I will look forward to catching up with you at the live session if you're going to be there. If not, don't worry. If you're a guidance member, you can always access it on the members area on the website. But if I don't see you there, I will look forward to seeing you in tomorrow's Saturday share. In the meantime, folks, let's go get sober together. Bye.